All right, so for today's lesson, we're going to be focusing on basically the other two operations that we can find. So if you notice, yesterday we talked about addition and subtraction, which are the first two operations. We went through a whole class period on this. And we talked about how we can take two different functions and create a single function with this. Okay? Well, today we're going to be talking about the other two operations, which turn out to be multiplication and division. So let's just kind of focus on the word problem first. Okay? Let's say Jim has this in the shrub business where he installs shrubs over an 8-hour day. Okay? Well, in the first function here, they want us to create a value n of h for which I get an equation for how many shrubs can he install in an 8-hour day. Well, understand that we're doing h is the hours to install one shrub, and we have a total of 8 hours in the day. So if I want to think about how many shrubs I can install in one single day, it's just 8 times h. Okay? Now, this is an important question to understand because that's what are the restrictions on the domain of n and h? Now, we haven't talked about this much, but domain is really just what x can't be. Okay? Or, in other words, our independent variable, okay, which in this case is h. Okay, so what we're talking about is what h can't be. Okay, well, the only thing you have to know is that, like, in a real world problem, there's always going to be certain issues. For example, like with time, you can't have a negative time, or else that would be considered time travel. Okay, we don't know what that is. We haven't actually done that yet. So when we think about this value here, what comes up is h has to be greater than 0. Okay, because that's determining how long it takes me to create a shrub. Well, it can't take me 0 hours to create a shrub because nothing happened then, and it can't take negative time. So when I think of my restriction, technically that's my restriction. My hours have to be bigger than 0. And then in the next situation, they're basically going to ask us, okay, well, Jim will charge $16 for each shrub. He will also charge $65 per hour for installation service. Write a function C of X represents the amount Jim will charge for a shrub that takes H hours to install. Okay, this kind of goes back to our old equations where if I'm building a cost, it's always the per value. So we have 65 per hour. So I'm going to do 65H. And I'm going to add that to the cost of a shrub, which is 16. Okay? So now I have the situation where I have a cost equation and I actually have a number of shrub equation. Okay? Well, what I want to do is basically come up with a value that's going to give me a total. Well, to do this, I have to multiply these values together. So I'm going to create this function called n times c to the h, which just like yesterday is basically telling us we're going to take the two functions and multiply them together. So if I were to do this, this would become 65h plus 16 times 8h. Now, this goes back to when we have to distribute those values through. We actually have to multiply those values together. So 65 times 8 comes out to be 520. And then h times h becomes h squared. And then 16 times 8 comes out to be 128 times h. And now I've created an equation that if I plug in my hours it takes me to create a shrub, I can get my cost. Okay, because that's going to equal my n times c h. So that's kind of the main component of today's lesson. That we're trying to basically come up with these different values using these different types of operations. Let's just go through a couple of these and actually talk about them. So for example, if I look at letter A, f times g of x, really all this is saying is I'm going to take the f of x, the f of x, and times it to the g of x. So the thing we have to understand is that that also means that I have to take the function of 2x and multiply that to g of x, which is x plus 3. Well, anytime I'm multiplying factors like this, especially binomials and so forth, I have to make sure I'm distributing that value through. So the 2x gets multiplied to both of these values. Well, 2x times x becomes 2x squared because there's 2 total x's now. And then 2x times 3 becomes 3x. And so this is my new function. If I look at letter B, now I have g of x times h of x. Well, if I take those two values, that's x plus 3 times 2x plus 6. Now, this particular problem time takes us back. Notice how I have two binomials here. Okay? That's important because whenever we have two binomials, we go back to the old school in which I have to FOIL this out, which basically means the first two values are multiplied, x times 2x, which is 2x squared. The outside values are multiplied, so that's x times 6, which is 6x. The inside values are multiplied. 3 times 2x is another 6x. And then L is the last, so the last values are multiplied. 3 times 6, which is 18. From there, we have like terms of 6x and 6x that we combine together. This becomes 2x squared plus 12x plus 18. And that is my final answer. It's kind of bringing back some prior information with FOILing and being able to FOIL two values out. Now, for the last step, we're going to look at basically division. Okay? And we're going to try to think about how can we actually divide values together. Well, let's look at this h of g of x. Okay? Division is actually fairly easy because all this is saying is I have to take h of x and divide it by g of x. Well, currently, we really haven't gone through how to simplify fractions. So if we really think about this, h of x is 2x plus 6, and g of x is just x plus 3. Well, note, technically at this point, it's not like I can really cancel anything out, so that's my answer. So division is actually very easy because I just going to write both functions on top of one another and create a fraction-like value. And really, that's all this lesson is about. It's about developing these values, creating the functions, and working through it. Now, after this lesson, we'll have almost all of our function compositions, right? We'll have multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. All right, so all of our operations are completed. However, we will be talking about one more thing tomorrow. Okay, so just kind of note that. There's going to be one more extra that we can actually do. But besides that, make sure you answer all the questions on the end puzzle, and I'll see you in class tomorrow. Have a great day.